The jungle was thick and endless, stretching in every direction with green walls of trees. The air was heavy, filled with the sound of insects and distant calls of unseen animals. Aaron moved slowly behind the guide, brushing vines away from his face. He was tired, but his eyes shone with the same determination that had carried him through months of searching. For years, explorers had whispered about a hidden Mayan pyramid, a structure never recorded, hidden far from any village or road. Most thought it was only a story, but Aaron had never believed that. He wanted to see it with his own eyes. The expedition was small. Only 5 people had agreed to join him. There was Thomas, a local guide who knew the forest better than anyone else. Lyra, a historian who had studied the Mayan people since her youth, walked with a notebook always in her hand. Behind them came Neo, a young assistant who carried most of the equipment, and Mara, a photographer who wanted to capture the first images of whatever they found. Together they moved through the wild, careful not to lose the narrow path Thomas had cut with his machete. The heat pressed down on them, and every step felt heavier than the last. Yet Aaron could not stop smiling. His heart beat with excitement because he believed they were close. He carried an old map, worn and faded, with strange markings that matched the hills and rivers they had passed. It was given to him by an old traveler who claimed it came from his grandfather. Most scholars had laughed at the map, but Aaron trusted it. Every landmark had guided them deeper into the forest. By midday, the group reached a small clearing. Sunlight broke through the trees and Thomas raised his hand for silence. Aaron listened. The forest seemed to hold its breath. No bird sang and even the insects had gone quiet. Something was near, something that made the land itself feel different. "We are close," Thomas said in a low voice. He pointed to a rise in the ground covered in roots and moss. "There," the group pushed forward. At first it looked like nothing more than a hill, but as they cleared away vines, blocks of stone appeared beneath the growth. Huge stones, each one carved with patterns that time had not erased. Lyra gasped, running her fingers across the ancient symbols. "This is it," she whispered. "A pyramid. It has been hidden for centuries." The structure rose higher than any of them expected. Trees had grown over it, hiding its shape, but the base was wide and strong. Steps climbed toward the top, though many were broken or buried. The air around the pyramid was strange. The compass in Aaron's pocket spun without stopping, and the digital watch on Neo's wrist flickered. Aaron stood still, his eyes locked on the shadowed entrance near the base. It was a narrow doorway, dark and silent, as if waiting for them. A wave of excitement and unease rushed through him. This was no ordinary ruin. Something inside was alive, though not in the way of breathing creatures. It felt as if the stones themselves were awake. The group set up a small camp near the pyramid. Mara took photographs from every angle, while Lyra copied the carvings she could reach. Thomas watched the trees with unease, muttering that the forest was restless. Neo unpacked tools and lamps, preparing for the exploration inside. As the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched across the clearing. The pyramid looked even more mysterious in the fading light. Aaron sat near the entrance, studying the doorway. The carvings above it were unlike any Mayan symbols he had seen before. They showed not only human figures but also stars, planets, and strange shapes that looked almost like machines. He called Lyra over, and together they examined the wall. She frowned as she traced the lines. "This is not only Mayan work. These symbols, they are not part of any pattern I know. It is as if another hand helped shape them." Aaron felt a chill. He thought of the stories told in small villages. The legends spoke of gods who came from the sky, who walked among men and demanded temples. Perhaps those were not only stories. Perhaps this pyramid was more than a tomb. Night fell quickly in the jungle. The team lit a fire and shared a simple meal. They spoke in quiet voices, each one feeling the weight of the discovery. Mara dreamed aloud about the fame her photographs would bring. Neo wondered what treasures might lie inside. Thomas warned them that not all treasure was meant to be touched. Aaron listened, but his mind was elsewhere. He could not stop thinking about the silence of the forest, the way the compass had spun, the strange carvings of stars. His heart told him that they had found something far beyond gold. This pyramid was guarding a secret that had been hidden for ages. As the fire burned low, Aaron looked once more at the dark entrance. Tomorrow they would step inside. Tomorrow the pyramid would reveal its secrets. For now the night seemed endless, and the air felt heavy with unseen eyes. The jungle whispered around them, but the pyramid waited in silence. Aaron closed his eyes, knowing that sleep would not come easily. Somewhere inside the stone walls, the past was waiting, and the first step into the unknown would change them forever. The morning came slowly, with a pale light breaking through the jungle canopy. Mist hung low between the trees, and the air was cooler than the day before. Aaron woke early, his eyes drawn at once to the pyramid. Even in the soft light, the structure seemed alive, as if it had been waiting through the night for them to return. The team gathered quickly. Thomas sharpened his machete, his face set in a serious expression. Lyra prepared her notes and maps, eager to record every detail inside. Mara checked her camera again and again, wanting to be sure it would work in the dark. Neo carried the lamps, batteries, and tools, his nervous hands fumbling as he packed. Aaron gave them a steady look. They had come too far to turn back now. When they stepped toward the entrance, the forest around them grew still. No bird moved, no insect hummed. The silence pressed against them, heavy and strange. Thomas paused, his eyes narrowing as if he could feel something beyond sight. "The forest does not like this place," he muttered. But still he walked beside Aaron. The doorway was narrow, just wide enough for one person at a time. The carvings above it glowed faintly in the morning light, stars and lines crossing over each other in shapes that no one could fully understand. Aaron placed his hand on the stone. It was cool and rough, yet beneath the surface he thought he felt a vibration, like the steady beat of a heart. They lit the lamps and stepped inside. The air was dry, carrying the smell of old stone and dust that had not been touched for centuries. The corridor stretched forward, walls close on either side. As they walked deeper, Lyra's lamp caught carvings along the walls. She stopped often to study them, her eyes wide with wonder. "These are not only Mayan symbols," she whispered. "Look here. These figures show men standing under stars, reaching toward objects in the sky. And here these shapes look like machines, but they are carved with the same care as the gods." The others gathered around her. The carvings seemed to tell a story, one that grew stranger the further they went. First came images of Mayan kings and warriors, strong and proud. Then came shapes of stars, planets, and lines of light crossing the sky. After that, figures not quite human appeared, tall, with long limbs and eyes that seemed too large. They stood among the people, and the people bowed before them. Neo swallowed hard. "Are these visitors? From the sky?" Lyra nodded slowly. The Mayans may have believed so, or perhaps they truly saw them. As they walked deeper, the story on the walls darkened. The carvings showed people lying in rows, thousands of them, their hands crossed over their chests. Above them stood the tall figures, holding something round and bright. Around this object, lines spread outward, touching the people as if filling them with light. Aaron stared at the carvings, his chest tight. The message was clear, though he wished it was not. These walls spoke of something buried here, something powerful. Not treasure of gold, but a force connected to the dead. The corridor opened into a wide chamber. Their lamps threw long shadows across the high ceiling and stone pillars. In the center of the chamber stood a massive slab covered with symbols. Unlike the walls, these carvings were sharp, almost fresh, as if they had been renewed many times. Thomas was the first to speak. "This is a warning." Lyra traced the symbols with her fingers, reading the patterns slowly. Her voice trembled as she translated. "It says the dead do not rest. It says the treasure is not for the living. It says those who take it will awaken an army." The words hung in the air. Mara lowered her camera, her face pale. Neo shifted his weight nervously, his lamp shaking in his hand. Even Thomas, who had faced many dangers in the jungle, took a step back. Aaron felt the warning press against his mind. He remembered the strange silence of the forest, the spinning compass, the unease that had filled him since their arrival. Every sign pointed to the same truth. This place was not meant to be touched. Yet turning back now felt impossible. They had uncovered something lost to the world, and no explorer could walk away without knowing more. He turned to his team. "We will be careful," he said firmly. "We are not here for gold. We are here to learn. If the Mayans left this warning, we must respect it. But we cannot leave without understanding what it means." The others nodded, though their eyes showed doubt. The fire of discovery burned inside all of them, but fear was growing too. They pressed onward, deeper into the pyramid. More chambers opened before them, filled with carvings, statues, and broken relics. Each chamber seemed to carry the same message, written in different forms. The treasure was not gold or jewels. The treasure was a power buried with the thousands who had died here. By the time they returned to camp at dusk, the weight of the warning rested on every heart. Mara no longer spoke of fame. Neo avoided the carvings, refusing to meet the eyes of the tall figures on the walls. Lyra filled her notebook with drawings and words, her face pale as she worked. Thomas sharpened his machete again, watching the trees with quiet suspicion. Aaron sat by the fire, staring at the pyramid's dark entrance. The warning was clear, yet the call of discovery was stronger. He knew that tomorrow they would go deeper. Tomorrow the pyramid would reveal even more. But in his heart, he wondered if they would be ready for what they might find. The jungle whispered around them as the fire crackled. The pyramid stood in silence, its secrets waiting, its warning unheeded. The next morning the camp was quiet. A light fog drifted across the clearing and the air felt heavy. The group moved slowly as they prepared for another day inside the pyramid. Each of them carried the memory of the warnings carved on the walls, yet none could resist the pull of discovery. Aaron stood at the entrance with a lamp in his hand. He felt the same vibration through the stone that he had sensed on the first day. It was like a steady rhythm, as if the pyramid itself had a heartbeat. He drew a deep breath and stepped forward, leading the others inside. The corridor swallowed them in darkness. Their lamps pushed back the shadows, casting long beams across the walls. Lyra walked close to Aaron, her notebook clutched tightly. Thomas kept his machete in one hand, moving silently but watchful. Neo carried extra batteries and tools, his face pale. Mara brought up the rear, snapping photographs whenever the carvings caught the light. As they moved deeper, the air grew colder. The silence pressed harder, so heavy that even their footsteps sounded muted. Soon the corridor opened into a vast chamber unlike anything they had seen before. The ceiling rose high above them, lost in shadows. Across the floor lay rows of stone coffins, each one carved with patterns and symbols. The sight froze them in place. There were not 10, not 50, but hundreds of coffins stretching into the darkness. Aaron raised his lamp higher, and the light revealed more rows beyond, almost endless. It was as if the entire chamber had been built as a resting place for thousands. Mara whispered, her voice shaking. "This is no tomb for a king. This is a grave for an army." Lyra moved closer to one of the coffins. She brushed away dust and traced the carvings with her hand. These symbols match the ones on the warning stone. The people buried here are not ordinary. They were chosen to guard something. Aaron knelt beside a coffin. The lid was sealed tightly, but faint cracks ran along the edges. He leaned closer and felt a strange warmth seeping through the stone. His chest tightened as if the air itself was pressing against him. Suddenly a low hum filled the chamber. At first it was faint, like distant thunder, but soon it grew louder, vibrating through the floor and walls. The lamps flickered, and Neo cried out as his battery pack sparked in his hands. The hum grew deeper, steady and rhythmic until it matched the pulse Aaron had felt in the walls. The coffins began to tremble. Dust fell from the lids, and cracks spread wider across the stone. Thomas gripped his machete and stepped back, his eyes darting from row to row. "The dead are moving," he whispered. One of the coffins split down the middle with a sharp crack. The lid slid aside and a body inside slowly rose. The figure was tall, its skin dry and pale, yet its features were strange. Its face was long, its eyes too wide, and its chest glowed faintly with a light that pulsed like the rhythm of the chamber. Lyra gasped, dropping her notebook. "These are not only men. They are something else. Something mixed." The figure stepped out of the coffin with slow, heavy movements. Then another lid broke open and another figure rose. Soon more coffins split until dozens of tall forms stood in the chamber. Their eyes glowed with faint light, and though they made no sound, their heads turned in perfect unison toward the intruders. Mara snapped a photograph, but her hands shook so badly that the camera nearly slipped. Neo stumbled backward, his lamp shaking wildly. Thomas raised his machete, though he knew it would do little against such beings. Aaron forced himself to stand firm. His mind raced, but deep inside he knew this was the truth behind the warnings. The pyramid was not only a resting place, it was a prison. The dead had been sealed with the treasure, bound by the strange light within them. The hum grew louder, filling every corner of the chamber. The glowing figures began to move, stepping slowly between the rows of coffins. They did not stumble or sway like lifeless corpses. Their movements were measured, controlled, as if guided by a single command. The group retreated toward the corridor, their lamps shaking. The figures did not rush, but their steady steps filled the chamber with dread. It was clear they would not allow intruders to go deeper. As they reached the edge of the chamber, Aaron looked back. For a moment he locked eyes with one of the glowing figures. In that gaze he felt no hatred, no rage, but something older and colder. It was the look of a guardian carrying out its duty, a duty carved into the very stone of the pyramid. They stumbled back into the narrow corridor, hearts pounding. Thomas shouted for speed, urging them to move. The hum followed them, echoing through the walls, steady as a heartbeat. When they reached the outer chamber near the entrance, the hum faded slightly. The glowing figures did not follow beyond the rows of coffins. It seemed they were bound to that chamber, tied to the treasure they protected. The group collapsed near the doorway, gasping for air. Mara clutched her camera to her chest. Neo dropped his tools, shaking so badly he could not speak. Lyra sat on the stone floor, her notebook forgotten, her eyes wide with terror and wonder. Aaron stood with his lamp, staring back into the dark corridor. His voice was quiet but steady. The warning was true. The dead do not rest, and they guard something we cannot yet see. The pyramid had awakened. The night was restless at the camp. No one slept well after what they had seen inside the pyramid. The glowing figures haunted every thought, their silent eyes fixed on the living. The fire burned low and the sounds of the jungle returned, but none of the team felt comfort in the ordinary calls of birds and insects. The forest no longer seemed alive with beauty but heavy with warning. Aaron sat apart from the others, staring at the pyramid through the darkness. He thought of the carvings, the endless rows of coffins, and the strange light in the chests of the guardians. He remembered the steady hum that had shaken the chamber. It had not been random. It had been controlled, like the beat of a heart or the rhythm of a machine. At dawn, Thomas urged them to leave. "This place is not for us," he said firmly. "The forest is uneasy, the stone is awake, and the dead walk again. We must go before more follows us." But Lyra shook her head, her eyes sharp with determination. "We cannot leave now. The warnings tell us something important. We are close to the truth. If we walk away, this mystery will remain buried forever." Mara looked torn between fear and ambition. Her photographs were proof of something the world had never seen. Fame waited for her if she carried them home. Neo said little, his hands trembling as he packed and repacked the same tools. He feared what lay inside, yet he could not abandon the group. Aaron listened to them all before speaking. "We came here for discovery. We will not take treasure, and we will not disturb the dead more than we already have. But the carvings hold a story, and I believe it is one that belongs to all humanity. We must understand what the Mayans tried to hide." Reluctantly, Thomas agreed to guide them once more, though his eyes showed no trust in the decision. That day they returned to the pyramid with careful steps. The air inside was cooler than before, and the walls seemed to echo with a faint hum that had not completely faded overnight. They avoided the chamber of coffins, choosing instead a different passage that sloped downward. The corridor was narrow, and the carvings on the walls grew denser. Lyra stopped often to study them. Her voice trembled with excitement as she read the story aloud. The Mayans were not alone. Visitors came from the stars bringing knowledge and power. They taught men to build, to measure the skies, and to carve their memory in stone. But the visitors also brought a gift that was a curse. A core of light, a stone that could command life and death. The group listened in silence as her words echoed in the narrow corridor. The carvings grew darker in meaning as they moved forward. Images showed people bowing before the star beings, then thousands lying down as if asleep, their bodies glowing with the same light the team had seen in the coffins. Neo shivered. They buried their people with this core. They used it to make them rise again. Lyra nodded. "Yes, the treasure is not gold. It is power. A power to command the dead." The passage opened into a smaller chamber, round in shape, with walls covered from floor to ceiling in symbols. In the center stood a pedestal of stone, empty but marked with the outline of a round object. Aaron stepped closer, his chest tight. The pedestal looked like it had once held something glowing, something that matched the carvings. "This is the core," he whispered. "The source of the hum, the power that binds the guardians. It is the treasure buried with the thousands." The air in the chamber was heavy, pressing against them. Mara lifted her camera, but her hands shook so badly that the lens clicked against the stone as she steadied it. Thomas stood near the doorway, eyes scanning the shadows, unwilling to step closer. Aaron touched the edge of the pedestal. It was warm, though the room was cool. He felt a faint pulse beneath his fingers, as if the object that once rested there still left behind its heartbeat. Suddenly the hum grew louder, echoing through the walls. The ground shook lightly, dust falling from the ceiling. The group staggered, fear flashing across their faces. "They know we are here," Thomas said sharply. His hand gripped the machete. "The Guardians will come." Aaron pulled back from the pedestal, his mind racing. The Mayans had built this pyramid not only as a tomb, but as a prison to seal away the core and the army it commanded. They had chosen sacrifice over power. They had left warnings for those who came after, hoping no one would make the same mistake. "We must understand why they sealed it," Aaron said. His voice was steady, but his heart pounded. "This is not only history. This is a choice they made for the future. If the core is awakened fully, it may give one person control of the army. That is why the dead rise when we enter. They are bound to protect it." Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide. "If that is true, then anyone who touches the core could command thousands. Imagine what could be done with such power." Mara's breath caught. "And imagine what would happen if the wrong person found it." The group fell silent. The hum pulsed around them, steady and deep, as if the pyramid itself was listening. Aaron turned back to the pedestal. He knew the truth was clear. The Mayans had hidden this treasure not to keep it safe, but to keep the world safe from it. Humanity was never meant to hold such power. They left the chamber quickly, the hum following them like a shadow. When they reached the surface again, the sun was high, but the warmth did little to ease their fear. That night, as the fire burned low, Aaron spoke to the group. "The pyramid is more than a ruin. It is a warning to us. The Mayans faced a choice, and they chose to bury the power with their dead. Now we face the same choice. Do we walk away, or do we go deeper and risk awakening what was meant to sleep forever?" No one answered. The jungle whispered around them, and the pyramid waited in silence. The night was heavy with unease. Around the campfire, the group sat in silence, each lost in thought. The discovery of the pedestal and the story of the core had shaken them more than the sight of the coffins. The warning no longer felt like old legend. It was real, alive, and close. Thomas kept watch with his machete across his knees, eyes fixed on the trees. Mara stared at her camera, unsure whether to feel proud or guilty for capturing proof of the Guardians. Lyra's notebook was filled with sketches and words, but her hand trembled as she wrote. Neo stayed close to the fire, glancing often at the pyramid as if expecting something to emerge. Aaron sat quietly, thinking of the choice the Mayans had made long ago. When dawn came, the air was still and heavy. Thomas wanted to leave at once. "The forest whispers to me," he said in a low voice. "The earth remembers what sleeps in that pyramid. We are not welcome here," but Aaron could not leave yet. His heart told him there was still more to uncover. The carvings had spoken of a core of light, and if it still existed, then the danger to the world was greater than they imagined. "We must go back," he said firmly. "If the core is inside, it must not fall into the wrong hands. We cannot walk away without knowing." Lyra supported him. "If we can learn the truth, we can warn the world. The Mayans left the story for a reason. We are here to finish it." With heavy steps and tired hearts, the group returned to the pyramid. The entrance was as dark and silent as before, but the air inside seemed thicker. The hum had not faded. If anything, it was louder. It followed them through the corridors, steady as a heartbeat pressing against their skin. When they reached the great chamber of coffins, they froze. The lids of many coffins were already broken. Figures stood between the rows, tall and silent, their eyes glowing faintly in the light of the lamps. The Guardians had risen in greater numbers than before. Dozens now stood waiting, their heads turning as one toward the intruders. Neo let out a choked breath and stepped back, almost dropping his lamp. Mara raised her camera but lowered it again, too shaken to press the button. Thomas gripped his machete, though he knew it was useless against such beings. The Guardians did not rush. They moved with slow, steady steps, their glowing eyes never blinking. The hum grew louder, echoing through the stone chamber. The air vibrated with power. Aaron forced himself to stand tall. His mind raced as he looked around the chamber. The carvings had spoken of the dead who would rise to protect the core. These were not mindless corpses. They were soldiers bound by command, their every step guided by the power of the core. The group retreated toward another passage, their lamps shaking. But as they turned, more coffins split open. Figures rose with the same slow grace, their eyes glowing, their chests pulsing with faint light. The chamber filled with the sound of cracking stone as more lids slid away. "The army is waking," Lyra whispered. her face pale. They are thousands, all bound to the core. The guardians began to move in rows, their steps echoing together like the march of soldiers. The sight sent a chill through the group. This was not chaos. This was discipline, as if an unseen hand directed them. Aaron realized the truth. The Mayans had not buried their people here to honor them. They had sealed them in as part of the army, guardians forever linked to the treasure. The core gave them life beyond death, and it chained them to its command. Dust fell from the ceiling as the hum reached a painful pitch. The walls shook and the floor vibrated beneath their feet. Thomas shouted for them to run, and they fled into a narrow side corridor, lamps bouncing as they moved. Behind them, the steady steps of the guardians echoed, slow but relentless. They ran until they reached another chamber, smaller but lined with more carvings. Aaron pressed his back against the wall, his chest heaving. The hum was everywhere, pulsing in his bones. Lyra studied the carvings quickly, her voice trembling as she read. It says the one who holds the core holds command. The army will follow no other. That is why they rise. They sense us because we are near their master's treasure. Mara looked at her with wide eyes. So if someone takes the core, the army obeys them? Lyra nodded. Yes, that is what the carvings say. The meaning struck them all with heavy force. The guardians were not acting on their own. They were waiting for the core to choose a master. Until then, they would hunt any who came too close. From the corridor behind them came the echo of footsteps, slow and steady, never hurrying yet never stopping. The guardians were following. Aaron turned to the others. We must reach the heart of the pyramid. We must see the core for ourselves. If it still exists, we cannot allow it to fall into the world outside. If it is destroyed, the army will return to sleep. Tomas shook his head. Or it will destroy us first. Aaron met his gaze. Then so be it. We have no choice. If we leave now, others will come. They will not respect the warnings as we have. The world will not be safe until we know the truth. The group fell silent. The hum surrounded them, deep and steady. The pyramid was awake and its army was rising. With no other path left, they gathered their courage and prepared to go deeper into the darkness, toward the heart of the mystery. The guardians marched behind them, patient and unstoppable. The deeper they moved into the pyramid, the heavier the air became. The walls were covered with carvings that grew stranger and darker. They depicted not only men and guardians, but also stars, planets, and objects that resembled machines. Every image seemed alive, as if it was waiting for someone to understand its message. Aaron led the group with steady steps, but inside he felt the weight of every choice they had made to reach this point. Thomas kept glancing behind them. His face was pale, his machete ready, though he knew it could not stop what followed. The guardians moved in slow, measured steps, silent yet unyielding. Each movement echoed through the corridors, reminding them that this army was controlled by something far older and stronger than any living being. Lyra whispered as they passed a wall covered in carvings. The Mayans did not just bury the dead. They built a system. The core binds them. It gives them life and purpose. Whoever holds the core can command them. Aaron stopped, his hand brushing against the cold stone. He thought of the chamber where the pedestal once held the glowing core. The power was enormous. One person could wield the army of the dead and change the world. But the risk was greater. The carvings made it clear. The core did not obey morality or kindness. It obeyed command. Neo shivered beside him. And if someone wants to use them for war? For power? Aaron's eyes darkened. Then the world could fall. That is why the Mayans hid it. They chose to bury thousands to protect humanity. They made the ultimate sacrifice, Mara spoke quietly. But what if the core is still here? We could see it. We could touch it. We could understand it. The world would know the truth. Aaron looked at her, seeing both hope and danger in her eyes. And what if the truth is too dangerous for the world to know? Knowledge without wisdom can destroy everything. They came to a chamber unlike any they had seen before. The walls were smooth, carved with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly in the light of their lamps. In the center stood a pedestal of solid stone, empty but unmistakable. This was the heart of the pyramid. This was where the core had rested. The hum they had heard for days was strongest here. It vibrated through the floor and walls, pressing against their skin. The guardians had stopped at the edges of this chamber, as if sensing the importance of the place. Their glowing eyes followed every step, patient and unblinking. Aaron stepped closer to the pedestal. He felt a pull, a force that seemed to speak directly to his mind. The carvings around him seemed to shimmer, and the hum rose in a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He realized the pyramid was alive with the power of the core, waiting for someone to make a choice. Lyra stepped forward cautiously. The carvings say the core chooses its master. The guardians rise for that person alone. No one else can control them. Aaron understood the gravity of the moment. One wrong choice could lead to disaster. One touch could awaken the army fully and give control to a human mind unprepared for its power. He looked at his team, seeing fear, wonder, and ambition reflected in their eyes. Each of them could be tempted. For a long moment, Aaron was silent. He thought of the thousands of guardians, their lives bound to the core, their purpose tied to obedience. He thought of the Mayans who had sacrificed everything to protect the world. He thought of the danger if a person chose power over wisdom. Finally, he spoke. The choice is not whether we take it or leave it. The choice is whether humanity is ready. And I know the answer. We are not ready. No one is ready. Mara looked at him with disbelief. Are you saying we should leave it here? After all we have seen? Aaron nodded. Yes, if we touch the core, we risk awakening it fully. We risk the guardians following a human command, and we cannot predict the consequences. The safest choice is the one the Mayans made. The pyramid is not a treasure for us. It is a warning and a prison. Neo exhaled shakily, relief and fear mixing in his expression. Then we destroy nothing. We leave it as it is. Aaron placed a hand on the pedestal, feeling the faint pulse of energy. We leave it. The pyramid will continue to guard the core. The army will rest until it is needed, but it will not follow anyone from this time. That is our choice. The hum of the chamber seemed to settle slightly, as if approving his decision. The guardians shifted but did not advance. They stood patiently as they had for centuries, waiting for a master who would never come. Lyra took careful notes and sketches. The story will be told, she said softly. We will document everything. The world may never see the core, but it will know the lesson. Mara lowered her camera, finally understanding. Power is not always meant to be held. Some things must remain hidden. Thomas exhaled deeply, his tension easing for the first time in days. Then we leave, and the pyramid keeps its secret. Aaron led the group slowly back through the corridors. Every step was careful, respectful of the chambers and carvings. The guardians followed to the edge of their boundaries, but they did not pursue. It was as if they understood the decision, as if the pyramid itself approved the choice of restraint. As they reached the entrance, the sunlight felt warmer than before. The jungle around them seemed to breathe again, the weight of the pyramid lifting slightly. Aaron looked back at the shadowed doorway. The heart of the pyramid waited, patient and unyielding, holding its secrets and its army. The choice had been made. Humanity would not claim the power, and the Mayan sacrifice remained honored. The living had proven wisdom could triumph over desire, even when temptation was strongest. Aaron stepped into the clearing and breathed deeply. The pyramid stood behind them, silent and eternal. The guardians would rest again, and the world would remain safe, at least for now. The forest was quiet as the group prepared to leave the pyramid behind. The sunlight filtered through the tall trees, casting patterns across the ground. Aaron paused at the edge of the clearing, glancing back at the shadowed doorway. The pyramid stood tall and silent as it had for centuries. The air seemed lighter now. The weight of the hum and the pulsing energy lifted. Yet a part of Aaron remained uneasy, knowing that the pyramid's secret still waited inside. Thomas packed their tools, moving slowly. His eyes never left the jungle around them, alert for any sign that the guardians might follow. Neo carried the equipment, his hands steady now after the tension of the past days. Lyra carefully stored her notebooks, filled with drawings and translations of the carvings. Mara took one last photograph of the pyramid from the clearing, capturing the way sunlight struck the ancient stones. Aaron spoke quietly, as if the forest itself could hear him. We have done what the Mayans intended. The core must remain where it is. The guardians must rest. Humanity is not ready for this power. Lyra nodded, her face thoughtful. We have the story. We will share what we learned without taking the core. That is our duty. The group moved through the jungle, retracing the path they had taken to reach the pyramid. The trees seemed less oppressive now, the air lighter with each step. Birds called in the distance and insects hummed around them. The forest no longer felt hostile, but alive in its natural rhythm. As they walked, Aaron thought of the guardians and the army of the dead. They had risen and waited for a master who would never come. The core had tested their resolve, showing them the temptation of absolute power, but they had chosen wisely. Their choice was one of restraint and respect, just as the Mayans had chosen centuries ago. By midday, they reached a small river that marked the edge of the jungle. Thomas paused, kneeling to drink water and wash his face. Neo and Mara followed suit, while Lyra took careful notes of the landmarks around them. Aaron stood back, watching the jungle and thinking about the pyramid, the carvings, and the story of the dead. The world will never know what lies within that pyramid, Mara said softly. But we do, and that is enough. Aaron nodded. Yes, some things must remain hidden for the safety of everyone. Knowledge is powerful, but it is also dangerous if used without wisdom. They continued along the river, their pace slow but steady. The weight of what they had witnessed pressed upon them, but it was a heavy weight of understanding, not fear. Each of them felt the importance of their decision and the responsibility they carried to tell the story accurately. By evening, they reached the edge of the forest where the jungle opened to hills and open land. The sun was low in the sky, casting golden light across the landscape. Aaron paused, looking back toward the dense trees. Somewhere within them, the pyramid stood, guarding its secret, its army still bound to the core, waiting for a master who would never come. Thomas spoke first. We did what we had to do. The pyramid keeps its secret and the world stays safe. That is enough for me, Lyra added. We will document everything. Scholars and historians will know the story. Even if the core remains hidden, that is our legacy. Mara looked at Aaron, her camera slung over her shoulder. Do you think anyone will believe it? Aaron smiled faintly. Some will not. But we know the truth. That is what matters. The pyramid tests everyone who enters, and only those who choose wisely can leave with their lives and their minds intact. Neo exhaled, his tension finally leaving him. I never thought I would see anything like this. The pyramid. The guardians. I will never forget it. As they descended the hills, the shadows grew long. The forest behind them seemed peaceful, as if the pyramid had accepted their choice. Aaron walked with a quiet pride, knowing that they had passed the ultimate test of restraint. They had chosen wisdom over desire, safety over temptation. The team reached a small village near the edge of the jungle. They were greeted by friendly faces, unaware of the dangers they had faced. For the villagers, the jungle was only a place of trees and animals. They did not know that deep within it lay a pyramid that held a core of unimaginable power and an army that could rise again if disturbed. Aaron looked at his team one last time. We leave the jungle behind, but we take the story with us. The Mayans' wisdom survives through us. We will honor it by sharing what we can, and by never seeking what we should not touch. They settled for the night, each one reflecting on the journey. Sleep came slowly, but it was peaceful. The fire burned low and the village was quiet under the starry sky. Far away in the jungle, the pyramid waited in silence. Its guardians rested once more, bound to the core, patient and eternal. The air around it was calm, but the hum of power remained faintly, like a heartbeat that never stops. The pyramid had tested the living, and the living had chosen correctly. The world was safe for now. Aaron looked at the sky, feeling the stars above as if they were connected to the carvings inside the pyramid. The story of the Mayans, the guardians, and the core would remain with him forever. And he knew that sometimes the greatest treasure was not power or wealth, but the wisdom to know when to leave things untouched. The forest whispered in the evening breeze, and the pyramid stood tall and silent, a monument to sacrifice, protection, and the careful choice of those who understand the value of restraint. Humanity had faced the test, and it had passed.